You had said before Game 1 that the Mavericks go as Kyrie Irving goes, and that certainly came to fruition. 30 points, 24 in the first half, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. But, Mr. Wilbon, if I told you about a year and a half ago, right, when the big three, as we called them in Brooklyn, broke up, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, that Kyrie would be the one that we would be talking about in the conference finals as a leader of his squad, what would you have said?
Honestly, no. No, there wasn't evidence of that then. You could forecast it if you want, but what we saw in Boston and Brooklyn, and by the way, what we saw in Dallas last year when they went 9-18, you go, no. And so that, to me, is where this conversation, the turnaround, you start there. Last year, we had great conversations, obviously, earlier today with Chris about that thing, that dynamic. How do you go from this to this? And how do players who've already gotten great... Kyrie Irving hit one of the great shots in NBA history.
What? When?
I'm sorry, Bob. He won a championship with one of the great shots in NBA history. And you think, okay, well, you don't have to prove anything anymore. Oh, wait. Not necessarily so. We've talked about this. But no, I wouldn't have said that at all.
And now, fast forward, and here we are.
We all know very few people on the planet have been more critical of Kyrie Irving than me over the last several years. I haven't said a negative word about him this year because there's nothing negative to say. He has been phenomenal. He's been a phenomenal player. He's been a phenomenal leader. He's been a phenomenal citizen, an ambassador for the game of basketball. To transition, to get away from the noise that was so self-inflicted on so many occasions, to transition to a point of near perfection. I can't say enough about him. You look at his teammates, they love him. You look at the organization, Nico investing in him, Jason Kidd investing to him. Even when he was celebrating and doing Ramadan and what have you, they catered to everything that he needed. He feels loved, he feels respected and appreciated, and he's repaid the Dallas Mavericks organization, I would say, by eclipsing expectations. We expected greatness on the basketball court from Kyrie Irving. We didn't expect this.
But Stephen, and he's been phenomenal. We've got excellence on the court.
Yeah. Right.
Whatever the questions were, the outside noise you talk about, had nothing to do with basketball.
Right.
It would have something to do with all these other things that obscured how genius he is.
Well, it affected him being on the basketball.
It really is.
And now that's not the case.
It was never about, can Kyrie Irving play basketball?
No.
At an elite level.
Yeah, right. Nobody, I don't think you ever said that. You can't play. Nobody ever said that. What I love watching about him now, and I didn't see early, is the tiny little things he does over the course of a game. What kind of teammate he is, what kind of leader he is, what he's doing to win the game. He's got no agendas except to win the game. He's actually being very selfless right now. And before, he may not have thought this, but not with his game, but with his behavior, some would accuse him of being selfish. With his behavior, not the way he plays. I don't think he's a selfish player at all. But right now, you're seeing, I think, the best emotional version of him, the best character that we've ever seen with Kyrie Irving. And you know what? He looks like he's happy. That's my favorite. He looks like he's at peace.
We had a conversation with him last week.
Good.
Sounds absolutely.
But the selflessness, it's underscored when you take a harder look at the fact that he joined a team that already had a superstar in Luka Doncic. And that's not always easy to do. You've done it a couple of times. You have played with Devin Booker, who was already established in Phoenix, with Steph Curry already established in Golden State, James Harden, the list goes on and on. What is the key to making that integration seamless?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a Kyrie fan. Like, there's a freedom and a joy that he plays with now. I had an opportunity to take my son to the Clippers Mavericks series, and I sat courtside, and I told Kai during the timeout, I said, man, you play harder now than you did 5 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's true, just the shape that he's in, the way that he plays the game. But when you change teams, it is extremely hard. It's extremely hard because you almost have to start over again. You have to build that trust. You have to show the guys in that locker room, no matter how good you've been somewhere else, you have to prove yourself over and over again. And so when you're in the huddle and you know you're Kyrie Irving like last year and J. Kidd is drawing up a game-winning play and he drawing it up for Luka, he ain't going to say nothing, but it's like, I'm me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So now if you watch them play, me obviously playing against them and watching them play, there's just a trust in both of them. You know, not necessarily my shot, your shot. Is you got it going, go kill.
And you know
and you got a star. And Luka Doncic that literally is coming on the court and saying, I had to do something in the second half because he carried us in the first. I got to do my job. I can't let him down. These are the kind of things you're hearing from the superstar of the Dallas Mavericks. I can't let him down. And he's the champion that's on that squad. He knows what it takes.
And these are two teams playing each other in the conference finals that we wrote off. I didn't. I knew all this all along. I knew Gobert would work, and I knew Kyrie and Luka was great. These are look.
Dallas didn't make, who wrote Minnesota off?
No, I'm not saying after that trade, they took a lot of heat with the Gobert trade. They took a lot of heat. That's not going to work. Two bigs. They're in the conference finals. Luka and Kyrie can't play together. They didn't even make the play. They're in the conference finals. So to Chris's point, not only is it hard for players to change teams, it takes time. Basketball is not a one-man show. It takes time. So I think that's what's so great to see Kyrie at peace and excelling in his team's winning games.
I said this on NBA Today, Michael Wilbon, but remember when Kyrie said to James Harden, you're the point guard and I'm the shooting guard?
Yes.
This feels like an evolution in that sentiment. At the time, everyone sort of called out, oh, well, is he deferring too much? What does that even mean for Kyrie Irving?
It was a signal that he wants to win.
Yeah.
At whatever cost, he wants to win. And first of all, it just speaks to his recognition, his awareness of who can do what where for this team to succeed.
We're going to go to the West now. The Mavericks, they took game 1 of the West Finals against the Timberwolves. Kyrie Irving, he scored 24 of his 30 points in the first half, and Luka Doncic, he closed it out with 15 of his game-leading 33 coming in the fourth. So let's take a look at them together now because they were locked all the way in for game 1. They combined for 63. It's the second time this postseason they've each scored 30 in a game during this playoff run. And let's just say the Timberwolves, they had a spirited film session today, and Chris Finch called out his team's effort here.
And I told the guys, it's been a long time since I've been this disappointed in your effort, your performance, your attitude, your application, your attention to detail. It just wasn't there. Western Conference Finals started. I'm not sure if they got the memo. They got it this afternoon.
He said the Western Conference Finals started, and I'm not sure they got the memo.
Wow.
Were you ever part of a film session like that?
Absolutely.
A couple of them over the years, they get a little bit spirited. But Anthony Edwards, Stephen A., said he was tired after game 1. And I understand playing in a 7-game series, it's emotionally, it's physically grueling, it's exhausting. But how can they get some more out of him?
Well, first of all, you got to be smarter. And as CP3 has been spending the last few days educating us all, just because you want a challenge doesn't mean you have to fully embrace it. You got to think about what you're asking for, what you're asking of yourself. Him being out there trying to chase around Kyrie Irving and stop one of the most prolific offensive players we've ever seen in this game ain't the greatest strategy in the world. You got to utilize other bodies around you and pick your spots and know what works for you. Focus on
and
that.
your team.
And your team.
Alex, real quickly, you were all defense. You've been all defense about 50,000 times. But were there times in the playoffs where it did exhaust you chasing around somebody as prolific as Kyrie?
Absolutely. I used to have to chase around Steph all the time.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And what's interesting in watching the game, and like we all talked about, we love that Ant said that he wanted to match up, but that doesn't mean you have to guard him the entire game, right? And so we love the competitiveness, we love the challenge, but you can start on him, and then throughout the game, you can change up your coverage, you can guard someone else, and that's probably up to his teammates to come tell him, right? Come up to Ant and be like, Ant, we know you guard and you expending all this energy, but I need you to score. I need you to be a little bit more aggressive, and I think that's what they're going to need to do in order to go forward.
And he's 6 of 16 in this game, but the issue isn't that per se. He took 2 shots in the paint. Yeah. Anthony Edwards, how good he is at getting to the rim. He took 4 2-point shots the whole game. So when he says he was tired, the statistics back that up. This is a guy that can get to the rim almost at will. And I think what Chris Finch might be upset about is, if you look at the numbers, Dallas had 62 points in the paint against Gobert and Towns and Naz Reid, and Minnesota had 38. And Minnesota scores, that's what they do. They're huge.
Right.
They got guys,
49 threes.
Yeah, they took a lot. They made some
threes.
So I think what Chris Finch is saying is, we were not the aggressor, and we were at home, and we can't let that happen again.
I want to go to something real quick, and it's Chris Finch. That's a soundbite right there. You don't see that very often, that just level of candor. And I find it interesting because Chris Finch went out on a limb a couple of times. The first time was when Karl Anthony Towns scored, 62, and they lost that game?
Yeah.
Yep.
And he sort of said, hey, wait a minute here. What is the agenda? And that could have gone either way. So you got to have that locker room. You got to know that before you do that publicly. And then you were just mentioning Game 5.
And in that film session, right, I'm sure they talked about that little 7-0 run that Luka went on.
Yeah.
Right? They were in a drop coverage. Kyrie talked about it in his post-game press conference. The drop coverage is with Gobert back, and now that allows your guards to get into the paint, get the defender on their back right there like Luka is. And Luka hit a couple middies, and then he caught a three on the wing with a live dribble. So with him being in a drop, that's getting those guys to those spots that they want to get to.
Let's talk a little bit about Rudy Gobert, because when he was off the court, the Mavs shot 14 of 14 on layups and dunks as soon as he went off the floor. And that's still with Naz Reid on the floor and Karl Anthony Towns out there. They always wanted to go to that double big. How can they overcome something like that?
Man, you almost got to mix up the coverages. I think that's what's happened to the teams. As I ain't trying to tell nobody what to do against me and nothing like that. But
yeah, let's hear that.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a couple people taking out their notebooks right now.
But it's always interesting, those coaches that sort of change up the defensive coverages. They keep you guessing.
Yeah.
They keep you guessing. They may blitz you out of this timeout, then you come down the court, they're in a drop. They just try to keep you off balance, and it's a chess match, and you just got to wait and see who's going to do what.
And I think what's interesting is, not to knock Anthony Edwards, he's very young, and he will certainly, I think, be at the level of Doncic and Kyrie. But Kyrie and Doncic have closed so many games. Mm-hmm. They're two of the best ever in this generation to do it. And I think Edwards, in that fourth quarter especially, when Luka ratcheted it up, and by the way, the defense on him was very good. He was not making easy shots. I love watching playoff basketball. I just love watching that elite type of offense going against
shot making.
The shot making was high-level shot making.
And there's a thread between the two games, East and West, and the losers.